Movies.
I guess I'm afraid.
Video games.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan.
Is there really much of a difference anymore? For as long as I can remember, I have been a lover of these two art forms. Both are great outlets for storytelling, and as technology improves and as the line between movie and game become blurred, I thought I would explore what one art form does better than the other, what art form does less well than the other, and overall, which one is the best and which one I tend to lean towards. I distinctly remember the moment I fell in love with movies. It was when I watched the first Spider-Man movie at 4 years old and saw this scene. I don't know why, it just stuck with me, and even then I remember thinking, how did they do that? I was lucky enough to grow up in a really great era of film. Between 1997, when I was born, to when I became a teenager in 2010, I grew up seeing the golden age of Pixar, the epic sagas of Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, Darth Vader on the big screen, the birth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, an incredible portrayal of Batman, the best James Bond film, Pirates of the Caribbean, and of course, Shrek. In all seriousness though, being brought up with banger after banger of release really solidified my love for movies as a kid. They affected me so much that I went on to make films and sketches of my own as a kid, then went on to study the art form in higher education, and now I work in the film industry. And honestly, I don't think I could ever see a time in my life where I don't love cinema and not be amazed by the magic of it. The other great love that was introduced much later in my life was video games. I had dabbled with Nintendo 64s and PlayStation 1s in the past, but the first console I ever properly owned was on my 10th birthday in 2007. I was gifted an Xbox 360 and a copy of Halo 3. And I was blown away. This was my first interaction with video game storytelling, and I was hooked immediately. Getting to experience a narrative where you are actively participating in a 3D environment with characters you'd connect with over hours of interaction? Come on. This is very embarrassing to admit, but I actually remember when I beat Halo 3 at 10 years old, I stood up and saluted the TV. Why am I saying this? But you get the point, it had a major effect on me, so major that I would then dive headfirst into this art form, and I'm still a huge fan of it. I have extremely fond memories of growing up in my teen years and experiencing incredible video game stories like Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, the Batman Arkham series, Skyrim, Saints Row, Max Payne 3, LA Noire, and Red Dead Redemption 1. Shit, even Call of Duty at times. Now, I'll put my hand up straight away and say I definitely spent too much time on these as a kid. My priorities were not sorted straight back then, but I genuinely think that the stories of some of these games were more emotionally mature than a lot of the movies that I was watching at the time. But before I go into the pros of these stories and what this art form has to offer, I want to go back to the world of film and talk about what they do great and what they could potentially have over games. First off, film is a much older medium than games, so it's had the time to earn the respect of the general public and is seen almost as a glamorous industry. When it comes to narratives, movies are almost 100% focused on the story. If your story sucks, your film more than likely sucks too. So for the most part, movies have tighter, better paced stories. Whereas with a lot of games, gameplay comes first and the story is written around it, which isn't a bad thing, it just is what it is. Movies are also shorter and way more digestible than most video games stories. With movies, you're usually in and out in either an hour and a half or 3 hours max. Some video game stories, especially the open world one, can be up to 100+ hours long, longer than some entire shows beginning to end, making them very overwhelming for some. Movies are often finished when they're released. Aside from maybe the uncooked CGI, you'll never get an incomplete film or a film that just stops working. With video games, some products are rushed out to meet certain financial deadlines even when they're unfinished. Sometimes this can result in just funny face glitches, and other times it can be so undercooked that it is literally unplayable, resulting in mass online backlash and ruining entire companies' credibility. Also, when you buy a movie, you are getting a complete package. You don't have to pay to unlock certain features like games suffer from with microtransactions, which are by far the worst part of that industry. A massive thing movies have over games is that they are a big display of practical craftsmanship. Almost the entire process of making a game is done behind a screen, whereas movies are more impressive to the general public in that, for the most part, you're really seeing a lot of that stuff happening for real, creating a great sense of awe. Some of the greatest films of all time have done this. Star Wars and Harry Potter for their production design, practical sets and costumes, Mission Impossible for the real stunts, real locations and lack of CG, more dialogue-driven films like The Social Network showing the craftsmanship of good dialogue and physical acting, even movies like The Batman showing off practical set design, atmosphere, cinematography, lighting and colour. In fact, the impact of all of this has been translated over to the world of video games in many ways. Some of the best games ever made like Red Dead Redemption, The Last of Us, Uncharted, Assassin's Creed and Ghost of Tsushima would not exist without movies like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, The Road, Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean and almost every Akira Kurosawa movie. Also, live action films in particular are respected much more due to involving real people, whereas a lot of people on the outside see video game acting as inferior or not being able to hit as well as live action acting. This definitely may have been the case in the 80s, 90s or even the early 2000s. Now, however...
Shit! Jesse, stand up! Hands in the air, I shoot this one too.
Don't you do it, Ellie. Get out of here.
Stand up! Now!
Don't you fucking dare!
Shut the fuck up! Fuck. Alright. Stop! Stop!
For people who are on the inside of the gaming world, you'll know that video games have been the source of some incredible acting, with some of my favourite games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Last of Us having some of the best acting I've legitimately ever seen, and people on the outside are starting to realise, so much so that it is not unusual for an A-list celebrity actor to appear in a video game now. Some examples being Mark Hamill as the Joker in the Batman Arkham series, Elliot Page and Willem Dafoe in Beyond Two Souls, Kit Harington, Ice Cube and Gary Oldman in Call of Duty, Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk, Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen in Death Stranding, Kristen Bell in Assassin's Creed, Kiefer Sutherland in Metal Gear Solid, and Rami Malek in Until Dawn. As said earlier, video game stories are much longer than film-related stories. This can be off-putting to some people, but for others it's what they like about it. Today, some games sell prices £70, so people like making sure that they're getting their money's worth. The longer form storytelling also means that stories don't have to be rushed or condensed into a time limit. The stories are allowed to breathe and really flesh out their characters more and really get attached to the characters and the journeys that they go on. The Red Dead Redemption franchise is potentially my favourite fictional story of all time, and I truly believe that I've never felt as much emotional conflict within me than when I experienced the story of The Last of Us Part 2. I don't think a fictional story has ever hit me as hard as this one, and I genuinely think it made me more of an empathetic person as a result. Story structure is another thing that games tend to have over films. Almost all films have a formula. They stick to a 3-act structure, which definitely works for the runtime that they're given. With games, however, you can control the pacing. In open world games, for example, you can experience the main narrative for a couple of hours and then go experience a side story for a bit if you want, fleshing out the world that the story is set in and the characters within it. The biggest thing that video games have over movies is the interactive nature of it. Films are passive. You can only watch the story happen. With games, however, you are actively playing a part in the story. You have to be the one to progress it. You exist in these worlds. Would you rather watch Nathan Drake try and escape from a plane, or be Nathan Drake trying to escape from a plane, where one mistake will result in the character's death? Would you rather watch Batman fight criminals in Gotham, or be Batman fighting criminals in a fully 3D, expansive and explorable Gotham? Video games also let you experience fictional worlds a lot better too, in my opinion. One of my favourite fictional worlds that I've ever experienced was Columbia from BioShock Infinite, an early 1900s city in the sky, being introduced with the happy faces, sunshine, fairs, and then slowly discovering its darker side. The religious dogma, the white supremacy, human experimentation and brewing revolutions. Not to mention the parts where you literally phase through different realities, seeing alternate versions of Columbia and how you affected them. Multiple choice is also a big thing that games have over movies. You could only enjoy a film storyline for the first time once, and only one way. It's very linear. Some games, however, such as Detroit Become Human, Heavy Rain, Until Dawn, and even Red Dead Redemption 2 all have multiple choice, where you can take the story into a completely new direction and experience the game's narrative in a completely new way more than once. In the horror game Until Dawn, for example, the decisions that you make could result in clues being either discovered or missed, the dynamics between the characters could all change, and most importantly, they could all die or they could all survive. All of their lives are in your hands. The multiple choice feature is also starting to creep in, with Black Mirror's Bandersnatch allowing you to take part in an interactive film with multiple endings, and I find it very hard to believe that we will not see something like this again very soon. So now that we've discussed these two art forms, Which one is better, movies or games? I think I'm going to have to give a cop-out answer and say that it all depends on the person. How much free time they have, their disposable income, their personal taste in story length, if they prefer experiencing live action stories, and so on. Both mediums have their pros and their cons, and a lot of video games today simply would not exist without the medium of film. For me, personally, film will always be my first love. It's the art form that I use to express myself and will continue to express myself in, and will always get excited by. However, when I think back to some of the most memorable narratives that I've experienced in the last few years, they're mostly from video games. I truly believe that we've just seen the tip of the iceberg of what this platform could do for storytelling, and I'm very excited to see where it's going to go in the future. But again, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what some of you have to say. What are your favourite narratives, film or game? Let me know in the comments, I'll definitely be in there with you. Thank you for watching this video and for your continued support on this channel as we slowly climb to 1,000 subscribers. It really does mean the world to me. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to see more projects like this. I will see you all next month with a brand new video.